I just wanted to not really discuss, but bring up an idea that was planted in my brain when I was a student in high school. One of my teachers said that all of advertising is just geometry. And we took a look at different logos and patterns and designs. And it's interesting because there's a lot of truth to it. Most of the time, our advertising and our logos have symmetry, which is a balanced proportion or a repeating pattern. We learned in geometry about line symmetry, something that could flip over a line and it would look the same, as well as rotational symmetry, meaning it could spin around and repeat the same pattern over and over again. Uh, Typically, right, they're trying to trigger and convince us that something is good to buy, and they use shapes and patterns, which are things that we like and that appeal to us. Things that are appealing, a lot of times they have balance or order, or there's a familiarity to them, something we see in nature or shapes that we grew up seeing. So, the goal is to have a positive emotion to get you to buy something. And sometimes that's not a good thing. A bad product with a great logo or a great advertising commercial or with nice packaging can be deceptive. So you can be convinced with the patterns and designs you see that you're buying something good and useful and appealing when in fact it might be either a harmful product or a product that's not very good at all. For example, I've seen on cigarette packages wings that remind me of the ancient wings of the Zoroastrian god. So let's take a quick look at some of the things we might see. So as I mentioned, there's symmetry with a line where something will be able to be cut in half or be cut with a line. And if we folded it over, it would mirror itself. It would have a mirror image or a reflected image of itself. But in addition, we have a rotational symmetry. So we could rotate this one every 5 and it would look the same every 1/5 of a turn. Here with the regular triangle, we could rotate it 3 times and it would look the same. But there are shapes like this arrow that when you rotate it, it does not have symmetry. So we use symmetry in mandalas and in artwork and in many other things. You could see a butterfly is a famous example for symmetry. So let's take a look at some of the logos, right? When you take a look at logos, you might see it looks like familiar animals, a bull, um, a puma or a cheetah, a lion, an eagle, things that signify strength or power. Um, but we also see other shapes that include, let's make this smaller, include the ever so famous circle. Um, we have things that you can cut in half with line symmetry, like the Honda symbol. We have um, the VW one we could cut in half. We have the rings of Audi. We have the symmetry and wings of the Bentley. So there are things that have both symmetry. We have the oval shape, the egg shape, which is very, very popular. So when we look at some of the more common logos, they do have um, a balance to them. And some of them have a balance like the Honda sign, but then are really they have a rotational symmetry. So if we cut a line in half, they wouldn't repeat themselves. So you begin to look at this and notice that, yeah, advertising does use geometric shapes, things we would use a compass for if we didn't have computers. Uh, Famous brand names as well. They have the circle and symmetry. They have the symmetry of the arch. Some don't. You have a square, but Home Depot itself isn't anything very particular. The ever so famous bitten apple has the egg shape for Apple. The spiral shape of Nike. But again, you could begin to notice the symmetry of famous brands. And again, they might use other symbols of beauty or symbols of power. Um, we look at luxury brands, and they will often have mandalas or repeating patterns. Here are some famous designer brands here, which do have symmetry, the sign of the eagle. Um, Sometimes you have the circle, but then this shape that doesn't have symmetry, it kind of grabs your eye. So, over and over again, you have these designs that might even use outright mandalas. You could look at the top 50 brands, and some of them are just words, so it's just name recognition. Others, they do have a symbol, a circle, symmetry, repeating patterns, and things that, I don't know, we remember better and that we are attracted to. Here are some sample logos for people coming up with new businesses, and you see a lot of geometry shapes, repeating patterns, flowers, and other circular designs. Um, Here are some more famous name brands we can take a look at. And so, whenever we see geometry, we can stop ourselves and ask, am I being tricked into thinking this is something more beneficial or more good than it really is? Because the product behind the label is obviously not the same as the label. You might have a good or a bad product. A lot of yoga or health ones will put in flowers and lotuses, which we're very attracted to, which have symmetry. We have the Gayam pattern, has the seed of life. This is a yoga brand, Gayam. So, we can even get into religious symbols. Religious symbols have a lot of symmetry and patterns and designs. We have um, things that, again, we would use a compass for, and things that have symmetry, and things that we might relate to subconsciously or consciously. Looking at some of the religious symbols, you have the Star of David, which uh, has the rotational symmetry, the perpendicular line of the cross, even the church itself, you can cut it with a line of symmetry. You have the moon and the stars, which are very popular symbols, the star representing life. The Jesus fish has the egg of life in it. Um, the Om symbol seems more like words or characters, but it's very recognizable. You have the lotus, the yin yang, and the bird, the dove, which represents peace. So things that either symbolize or have geometry, which is repeating patterns and symmetry, really are used to connect us to things and help us to either remember them or even to spark our interest in them when it's a new name brand. So it's just something to consider that I thought was interesting, and it almost makes me want to be a little bit more careful. Am I being tricked by the brand names that are around me? Are the products good, or are they using geometry to convince us they're good? And some will be good, even with good geometry that can sell an ad or sell a brand very well. The product itself might be good for you, healthy for you, and maybe a valuable or a product that's worth its money. But it's just a thought, maybe we do use geometry and geometry shapes and patterns to kind of trigger people into buying our products with advertising. So what do you think? Do we use geometry to get people to buy stuff and to convince them about name brands and to have name brand recognition?